here in the Dignity Health Studio at the Bakersfield, California. I'm Zach Ewing, and it is Thursday, September 11th. So we're well into the prep season now, and we're off to a rip-roaring start here. Trevor's giving people the cutthroat symbol over there.
Only to Justin. Only to Justin, because he deserves it. He comes in here, thinks he owns the show, even though he's been gone for 2 weeks.
That's a 15-yard penalty now. I just want you to know that.
But you know,
Yeah.
You know what? Justin does actually own at least half of this show. It's kind of his. He helped baby it along. So
There you go. See?
Fine.
Yeah. All right, play nice, kids. And joining us is Stan Green. Let me see if I get this right, Stan. The Kern High School District Director of School Support Services.
You passed.
Does that fit on a business card?
Barely.
Yeah,
Barely fits.
Or is there like a shortened? I've thought about activities director, athletic director for the district. I mean, do you tell people, how do you explain your job to people?
The best job in the state of California.
All right.
That's how I explain it.
Boss is listening, I guess.
It used to I hope not. It used to be the director of athletics, and then it kind of transformed into the school support services because I have such a wide variety of duties.
Right, and that includes activities, athletics, and what all else are you in charge of?
Activities, athletics, enrollment discrepancies, intra-district transfers. My office processes about 4,000 to 5,000 intra-district transfer requests a year, so that's a big part of our job.
So you got the inside scoop on all these things, but you can't tell anybody. Is it one of those things where they tell you to go home and don't tell your wife, because if she talks, then it comes back to you? And
it's not quite like that at the Kern High School District. Every kid, and it's not just athletes. I mean, you figure we process 4,000 to 5,000, and it's very rare that it's an athlete. It's something has transpired or gone wrong if it gets to that point.
Right.
And that's a whole nother arena. This is just mostly, a kid looks to, hey, I don't really fit in here. I think I might fit in better at another site. And so we look at it and evaluate it, both the school sites involved and then myself, and try to make a decision what's in the best interest of the student.
How big is the bottle of aspirin in your desk drawer? It sounds like some of those situations can get pretty hairy.
Yeah, it's pretty big, but I am so blessed. I mean, that word is often overused, but I really feel like it. I have a great job. I work for a great organization. I hope if my boss is not listening, someone call them and tell them to turn it on. I have great bosses. I mean, I really do. I have a really, really good position, and it's not because it's easy. It's a difficult job. It's just, it fits my skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've done a great job. And one of your, I think you've been in the job, 4 or 5 years now?
Yeah, this is the start of my 5th year.
Okay. And one of your brain children, it has been the Peak Awards at the end of the year, where you honor the best in the Kern High School District in athletics and activities. And we've seen that great show at the Harvey Auditorium every year. And then another one was something I know you've been trying to do for a while, or at least thought about doing for a while, is this doubleheader football game we had out at Bakersfield College. And obviously you have your connection to BC, played pretty good quarterback there for a couple of pretty good teams. And this is something you really wanted to do, isn't it?
Yeah, this was a real personal thing, and it started the year I first got this job. Ryan Beckwith was at Bakersfield Junior College, former athletic director, former Georgia Bulldog, I believe, at one point in his career, and he and I just hit it off. And great guy, great for the community, had a great vision for the things that he wanted BC to do. And we started trying to talk about, what could we do to get the schools back up there. And so we spent the better part of a year, 2 years, just kind of talking about what it would look like and how we could get to that point. And then, of course, things transpired. He left. It kind of died out for a little while. Then last spring, Zav Databoy, the VP from Bakersfield College, contacted me along with Jeff Chudy and requested that we have a meeting. So we started in June. And, we started with Zav wanted a game there every week. And that facility is so huge, and and I knew it at the time, and we said it at the time that, hey, this place is too big. You don't want 1,000 people. We want 10,000 people.
BC holds about 20,000, so 1,000 looks awfully small there.
Right, and not to mention the fact that it costs a lot of money to go there. Not necessarily in rental fees, just in employee expenses. And so it got to the point where we said, hey, let's talk about a doubleheader. And so we started looking at the numbers from the year before on attendance of different games, and we picked those 2 games with those 4 teams. We felt like that would be a good opportunity to draw. We drew about 5,000 paid people. Our costs were, our employee costs were quite a bit, but, like you said, it was personal. I played there, and I've been there when there's been big high school games there, and I just think it's an opportunity that we need to continue to develop to give our kids a chance to go play in a facility like that.
Yeah, and they were two great games. Justin and Trevor and I were all there, and Ridgeview beating Frontier and then BHS beating Oaks Christian. And it was a good crowd, like you said, 5,000. A little bit less than what you had anticipated or hoped for. Is that right? Fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say. But, I mean, we had a lot going against us. It was a 3-day weekend.
Right.
And that makes it hard. It's the first game of the year. It was hot. We had hoped for about 7,500. Zav and I had a meeting the week before, and he said, well, when are you going to come back? And I told him, let's wait till Friday. I said 5,000, we'll really have to think about it. 7,500 were there. 10,000 we're coming back for sure.
Right.
And we drew 5. I think there's some things that we can do better on our end to make that work better and to get more people there. So it's still out there.
Well, here's one question. You talk about things that maybe could change. Did you talk about a Saturday doubleheader? Was that something that was discussed? I obviously need all 4 schools to agree to something like that.
So, coaches, right?
I immediately was thinking Saturday as a fan.
Yeah.
I know that head coaches don't like the change in routine. But as a fan, I was thinking, hey, Saturday you don't have to compete with the other 5 or 6 games in town. But I know coaches, they like their routine.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Some people, not very many, said, well, you should have done it on a Saturday, and I wanted to say back, well, we thought about that. It's the coaching.
Yeah.
It's the coaching thing. We want to respect our coaches in this district, and after all, they're the ones putting the blood, sweat, work, and tears into this, and our coaches would prefer to play on Friday. Some of them are okay with any day. Some would prefer to play on Saturday. It's just a matter of dealing with the personalities in it. And, at the end of the day, if we could have gotten 10,000 people, we felt like our profit would have been big enough that we could have just walked in and said, okay, here's how much you'll make if you play on Saturday. And then they would have jumped on it. And I think we'll get there. I really do. It might not be this year. It might not be next year, but we'll get there. I'm working with a group of people that helped me on this. And they've had some really good ideas on how to just make it a first-class experience for the kids. I had some good friends of mine. They've been friends of mine forever since I played at Bakersfield College, the Pavlitich family. Mm-hmm. And, their whole family was there feeding the kids hot dogs. Jim Marisich and Rusty Lewis from Lewis Barricades, they came out and barbecued the hot dogs, and the Pavlitiches fed them. And then Paul Pavlitich did our announcing, and Raymond's Trophies donated trophies to it. And they're, the Pavliches are already talking about, hey, next year, let's feed them tri-tip, which is good for me. I'm okay with the tri-tip.
I'm in.
Yeah, you're in? All right. So, we're talking about those types of things we want those kids to have an experience that they'll never forget. And that, it's hard for them. Let's face it, 95% of them will never have an opportunity to play in a facility like that.
I know Lewis is producing the show, but he would only eat tri-tip with a lot of barbecue sauce, so we have to at least say that.
And a milkshake.
Yeah. So here's $1 million question. Will the Kern High School District be back at BC this year or in the future?
Well, it really depends on what game is going on.
Sure.
The hard part is, you look at matchups and you go, okay, there's 2 more during the year that look like they have the potential to be huge. I think
BHS Ridgeview, BHS Liberty, I'm guessing. Or maybe something else.
Off the top of my head, I can't really name the games. I kind of remember, I believe the BHS Liberty game was the last week of the year.
Right.
So you look at that game, and then you try to find another game. So I think one of the other games at the end of the year was Independence plays Ridgeview. And, of course, you're talking about a lot of moons and stars aligning. They have to align perfectly.
Right. But you want those teams to be good. You don't want to plan it and have them be 3-6. Yeah.
Right. And so, let's assume all those guys win out. Well, on paper, that's an ideal game. Go, hey, let's do it. But the reality is,
you're also picking 2 schools so far away from Bakersfield College, and you're hoping to get that student body to travel that far to fill that crowd. That's a tough. That's a daunting task right there.
That's probably the number 1 hurdle. The number 2 hurdle is you can't move that game to Saturday because it's seeding.
Playoff seedings come out Saturday.
Yeah, and so you look at that and go, okay, so we can't move it to Saturday, so then we go back to the Friday issue, and are we really going to get a draw? And let's face it,
November,
what is that, the
6th or
7th?
Yeah.
November 6th or 7th, it's dark at 5. It might be colder, maybe. And we didn't end the last game until 11:52 on August 29th.
Oh, believe me, we know.
Oh, yeah. We know.
Because our deadline was 11:45.
There you go.
Stan, let me ask you a question. Now that the conversation has started, now that you've had that game in place and you have the numbers, instead of looking at just this season, have you thought about looking into maybe doing what the schools used to do and doing a Bakersfield versus Clovis, like I played in my senior year in '96 for Buchanan, where you get that city pride of Bakersfield versus Clovis, and maybe look into doing that early season double or triple header on a Friday or Saturday this time next year, the year after, and looking to see if maybe you can generate that revenue that used to be there for those games back into the fold.
Absolutely. That's part of the conversation. I think the thing that puts a roadblock in it for us is we're in the middle of a cycle. So our games for next year are year 2 of a 2-year contract. So, right off the bat, Mission Viejo comes up here next year to play Liberty Week 0, I believe is what it is.
Ooh.
That would be the logical choice of one of the games. The Saturday thing with the matchup against Clovis, Steve France, who has a similar position of mine up in the Clovis area, he and I have a pretty good friendship, and I think that he would be open to that. But the problem, the other problem with that is, and what was the problem with the 96 deal, is how do you project whether it's going to be a good game 3 years in advance, because that's essentially when you're making the contract.
Right.
And so it's real difficult because you don't want to bring a school up there that might struggle against a school that's a powerhouse. So it's kind of hard. The best way probably right now, the best model for us that we have is kind of what we're doing. We look at a game and go, that looks like a good game. The selling point would be the Saturday. We try to align it with BC when they're away. That's an issue. And then just to get the Saturday thing to happen.
How far in advance do these things have to be planned? I mean, obviously, the doubleheader came together relatively quickly at the end. You just announced it the week before. Say a season-ending thing with BHS, Liberty, Independence, Richard. Could you look at it in week 7 or 8 and say, yeah, now we know those teams will be good enough to pull this off?
Well, that's kind of part of my job is to look out and project those types of events. The doubleheader came together really late. One of the reasons it did was the lawn or the grass at BC got put in really late. They had some problems. On a Friday at 10 a.m., Zav had called me. I can't remember the date. It must have been about the 15th or maybe even a week before that, and said, hey, you're not going to be able to play. The grass isn't ready. And then Ed Davis, who's a big helmet club booster, came out and over the weekend made the grass grow long enough, the roots, to get us to play. So Monday it was a complete reversal.
Magic dust.
It must have been. I'll tell you. I mean, Bakersfield College worked so hard on that. It just all of our planning, we had planned, and then it was off, then it was on, then it was off, and everything just kind of crunched together in about a 5-day period. I mean, it was literally that fast to try to make it. The game ended. I go home. I get home about 1:30 in the morning, and I'm already starting to think, well, we were close enough to our number. We could do some things differently to save costs on our end. And what if they win out? Or what if we open league up there? The first round of league. What if we pick 2 or 3 games and open it up?
I believe Garces plays Bakersfield, which would be a big draw for a lot of alumni.
Can I throw in another what if? Are you looking at the possibility maybe if you draw enough during these, you may be able to find yourself competing for a bid for the CIF championships? Because Bakersfield is a lot more centrally located than Carson is. 20,000-seat stadium is a large enough venue for a state championship in the state of California. Are you looking that far ahead too, Stan?
Yeah, I'm working with Billingsley from the city. I think his first name's Matt. We're working on putting together a bid for the state championship games. There's also the possibility of a regional game. They're going to expand the bowl playoff system. I believe that if you're a section champion, you're automatically going to get a game. So that's going to be expanded next year. And, yeah, we are looking at that. We are talking about that.
Real quick, a dovetail question to that before we go to break. Section championships. They've been talking about one site at Bulldog Stadium. I think you told me last year that's okay with me as long as we get a piece of that pie too, and it rotates to Bakersfield and Visalia and Fresno. Is that still on the table? I mean, where are you at with that idea?
That thing gets brought to the CIF board
every 3
year.
or 4 years. Yeah,
it's almost every year,
Really?
And every year we fight it off. Our coaches don't want to do that. They want to stay home, and that's kind of part of the problem with the BC. Our coaches want to stay home. Our schools want to stay home. They can make more money at their own place. They have a home field advantage. They're comfortable. I guess would we be open to that? Maybe under the right model. The model that I would support it under is, for example, 3 years ago, Garces was at home in Division II, Ridgeview is at home in Division III, and BHS was at home in Division I. Those are 3 games I would like to see. So,
and I think Wasco was at home too, right?
I don't
maybe
remember.
it's a different year. Anyway,
So under that, if they were to say, okay, if you're the higher seed, you guys can go ahead and host it at BC. The higher seeds up north can host theirs there. As long as we're not giving that up, I would support it. But if you're going to tell, Ridgeview, who's, let's say they're a 1 seed, if you're going to tell them, hey, congratulations, you're playing in the Valley Championship and you got to go to Veterans in Clovis or you got to go to Fresno State, I don't support that. I don't think it's fair to those people in that community. I don't think it's fair to the kids to have to travel and give up that home field.
what about basketball? Because they all go to Selland. Are you okay with that? I mean,
That was before me. Well, here's the trade-off on basketball. We would like to host basketball. The problem is we host the state wrestling championship, and it's the same weekend.
Yeah.
And so what had happened was basketball, the intention behind basketball was to rotate. And once Bakersfield continued to get the state wrestling, we weren't eligible to pull basketball down here. But if we ever had wrestling on a different weekend, or, God forbid we lose it, I don't want to see us lose it. But if we were ever to have it on a different weekend and be able to host a basketball, I would go to CIF and say, okay, it's our turn. I mean, we should have a turn at that.
Well, tons of interesting stuff here. We're going to take a break. We'll be back another segment with Stan Green right after this here on BVarsity Live.